In this tutorial, we are going to talk about the selection tools, specifically the marquee tool. You should open the photo titled Marquee Tool and follow along as I go. To the left, you will see, or in the toolbox, you'll see the second section kind of divided by these lines here are 4 different tools. They are all belonging to the selection tools. We are going today to talk about the marquee tool, which is located right here and with the shortcut key M. If you click on that, you'll see there are 2 choices, the rectangular marquee or the elliptical marquee. So we're going to pick the rectangular marquee. And as with every other tool, as soon as you select it, you have options up in your tool, in your option bar. The only one we're going to worry about right now are these squares that are located here. I want you to make sure that the very first square is selected, the one called New Selection. So as long as you have that selected, you come over into your picture and now you just click and drag and you can create yourself a selection. Once you've made that selection, if you want to move it, notice my cursor is now a plus. So if I want to move it, I got to come up into my selection where you see the cursor change, and now I can move it. Or without moving the cursor, I can choose my arrow buttons and slide over or up or whichever I prefer. So I can do the same thing with the elliptical marquee. So I'm going to come over here, make sure the first square is selected, and now I'll drag out an oval, and again I can move it by going into my selection, and if I click outside it's just going to get rid of that selection excuse me, and expect me to now create a different selection. So as long as I click inside here, I can move it. Outside will get rid of that selection. Okay, I'm going to make one more selection here, just a big selection like this. And now I get this created and I think, oh, I don't really like this selection, I want to do something else. What I can do is I can deselect it by going up to the menu bar, selecting Select, and then Deselect, or notice the shortcut key Control D. So you will use this Control D option quite a bit as you move further into this course. One of the features with this tool is right now I'm in the elliptical marquee. If I hold my Shift key, so now I'm holding my Shift key and I drag, I create a circle. So the Shift key allows me to create a perfect circle. I'm going to deselect that, Control D, and I'm going to go to the rectangular marquee tool. Again, I'm going to hold my Shift key and drag, and now I will create a perfect square. So Shift, drag makes a square or a circle. I'm going to deselect this again. Okay, so why would I want to make a selection? So let me just take this selection, quickly make a selection here. So why would I want to do this? Well, there's lots of different reasons, and as we get further into Photoshop, you're going to see exactly how much you will use these tools. But right now, anything that I do will involve only the selection, only what I have selected here. So let me just look at, let's go to convert black and white. So we've done this before. I have to go to Enhance, Convert Black and White, and I'm just going to click OK, whichever one's selected for now. And notice that only what is inside that selection box, which has what's referred to as marching ants, those little black and white lines, will be changed. I'm going to go Control D and deselect, and now you can see that whatever was inside that box has been changed to black and white. Nothing that was outside the box has changed. How about, I'm going to go back using my undo history, and I'm going to go back to the selection that I was on. And then I'm going to show you another different little feature. Now I'm going to go to select up on my menu bar, and I'm going to inverse my selection. So now that means that everything that's outside of my selection is now being selected. Again, I'm going to just identify that by converting to black and white. Say OK. And you can now see I'm going to Control D and deselect. So everything that was outside, everything but the selected area, has been changed. This one little feature. Again, I'm going to go back up to my selection. Maybe another thing I might like to do with this selection is I might want to create its own layer. So if you remember, we can do that by going Control J, and notice in my layer palette I now have a layer with only that selection. I'm going to hide the background layer, and then you can see that I have this own selection. So now I can do various things to this selection, or I can drag it into another picture. I can do whatever I like with this. Okay, let's get rid of that layer. I'm going to go back up to this. I'm going to deselect by Control D. And now we're going to look up into the option bar. And I'm going to change to my elliptical marquee here. And let's have a look up in the option bar. We had the new selection box chosen. Now we can go to the next one, which is called the add to selection. So I'm going to click on that. And I'm just going to drag my circle wherever. Okay, there I go. And now notice if I move my cursor into the circle, it's no longer giving me that cursor that we had before where I could change or move it. If I now click on this to move it, it's going to change. I can't move it. It's creating another circle. So notice the little plus sign on my cursor. What this is doing now is it's actually adding to the selection that I picked. So to move it, I have to use my arrow keys. So now, because I was missing a little bit of that up there. Now what if I wanted the other flower in there? So I can make another selection and just continue adding to it. If I wanted this down here, I could add to it. I could take the skirt. Okay, or maybe I want to subtract something. So now I move over from the add to selection to the subtract to selection tool. So subtract to selection. There we go. And maybe I don't want this area in here, so I'm going to deselect this and this little spot here and maybe this little spot here. So I can create the selection that I want by adding or subtracting. The final little button over here is called intersect with selection. So this one's a little bit different, not a commonly used one, but we'll show how it works. And what you do here is when you notice the X on the cursor, when you select something, now it only picks the two common areas. So if I select this area here, it'll only take the overlapped area. So notice where the overlapped area is. I let go my cursor and that's what it picks. So not a really common one, but the add to selection and subtract from selection, very commonly used. Okay, I'm going to deselect that. Okay, now we're going to go back to add to selection. We're going to create a circle that has the first flower in it, and now I want to add to this, and I want the second flower. There we go. I'm going to have to move that up a little bit. To add, I'm going to have to get a little bit more over here because that's not included. Okay, so I'm happy with this for now. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to create a layer with this. So I'm going to go Control J and create my own layer. I'm going to hide the background layer here and you can see what it looks like. So what I'd like to do now is kind of make it like a little ad or something. So I'm going to create a layer. So I'm going to go to create new layer. Now I would like it to go under this layer one. Let's rename this and call it flower or cutout, because it's the flowers that are cut out or selection or whatever. Okay, so now I'm going to create a new layer, but if I hit the new layer button, I'll do that right now, you know it'll go on top of that layer. Well, I don't really want that. I want it to go under, so I'm going to undo that. And remember, if you hold your Control key and hit undo layer, create new layer, it'll create it under your current selected layer. Alright, so now I want to fill this, and I'd like to fill it with black, and I'm going to do it with my shortcut keys, but if you notice over here, both colors are white. So if I hit D on my keyboard, just straight D, that's going to give me the default colors. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to fill this layer, and if you remember, we always, when we did a previous tutorial, if you hold down Alt and hit backspace, it will fill with your foreground color, which in this case is black. So Alt and backspace gave me this. So now I got kind of a little project going here. But one of the things that I really don't like, and I'm going to zoom in here, I'm going to use my zoom tool, the Z tool. You're going to notice that there's quite a defined line between the picture and the background, and a very hard edge. And I don't really like that, so I'm going to go double click my hand tool and go back to fit screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a way that we can change that. So I'm going to come over here and hide my black layer. I'm also going to hide my cutout layer. And I'm going to come back to my background layer. And I'm going to make a new selection now. So I'm going to go back to my marquee tool, M, and I'm going to come up here and I'm going to look at this option in the option bar called Feather. And what this feather option does is it creates a nice soft edge on your selection. So the number that you pick depends on the size of your photo or the size of your selection. And the bigger the number, the softer the edge or the more feathered out the edge becomes. So I'm going to choose a high number. I'm going to choose 50. And I'm going to make sure I have my Add to Selection clicked, and I'm going to make this selection, move that over a little bit, up, and then I'm going to add to that selection. There we go. And now I'm going to say Control J. Oh, and now why did this happen? Well, let's have a little look. When I created this layer, and unless if we go backwards, notice the layer that's highlighted. I was creating this selection and I couldn't see the black, but I was actually on the black layer. So this is a very common mistake. So to make sure I get the right selection, I have to go down to the background layer. And it's still selected, so it's okay. Now I have the proper thing selected. I'm going to go Control J and duplicate that layer, or make that layer. I'm going to call this Cutout 2, or I'm going to call it Feathered. Okay, Feathered Cutout. Okay. And I want this oops, I didn't spell that right, but that's okay. I'm going to drag this up so that it's over the top of the black layer. And now I'm going to reveal the black layer. And now notice the difference in the edge. Look how soft this edge is right now. Turn off that bounding box. Okay, let's put the other layer on here. I'm just going to drag that layer down and just notice the difference in the edges. So you got this soft, take out this auto select layer because it's annoying. So you have this soft feathered edge and you got this really hard crisp edge. I'm just going to drag that one over and then we're going to see what we like better. So I'm going to hide the feathered edge and then I'm going to put on the feathered edge. I so much like the feathered edge better, so I'm going to keep that. So now we could just, if we wanted to, we could add a text to this. So right now my text color would be black, so if I typed in here and I just typed say Dundas, oops, I'm going to start that over, Dundas flowers, you cannot see it. This is also a common mistake, so well, we have no idea what's going on. So what we need to do is we can press okay on the text layer. It says Dundas flowers, but I can't see it, and the reason for that is it's black on black. So I'm going to go up here and hit the color box. I'm going to actually pick my own color rather than go in here. I'm going to go right into here and I'm going to pick a nice piece of the flower. I'm going to say, there's the choice that I made. Oh, that's pretty nice. I'm going to say OK, and there we have it. So now I might come into this little styling box up here. It says I can warp my text. Oops, I'm going, let's go to flag. Wave that a little bit. And OK, and there I got myself a very simple but a little ad that you can see how the feather option and the selection and stuff works. So if I was to save this now, just as a review, I would come in here and go File, Save As, then I would go to whatever I want, but notice the format is Photoshop. It's going to be a PSD file because it has layers on it. So that's great. I'll save it like that in case I want to come back and make changes. But when I'm going to submit anything that I've done to my teacher, unless it specifically states that she wants the PSD file, I have to go in here under layers and choose my flatten option, or I can go up here in the menu bar, layer, flatten image, and now notice look at the layers palette when I say OK, and it flattens. And now I can no longer make changes to those layers. So now I'm going to go File, Save As. Now my format is JPEG, so I got to choose JPEG, and then I would save that as whatever I wanted to call it. I'm not going to do that now because I don't want to save over the file that I already have. Okay, so there you have it, the marquee tool. M for shortcut key. We have the new selection, add to selection, subtract from selection. We have our feathered option, and we also have, if you want to make a perfect circle, you hold your shift, or a perfect square, hold shift and drag. Hope that you find this useful. Well, now we're going to take what we've learned and you're going to apply it in your next assignment called Toronto Zoo Ad, and you are going to take a picture in your pictures folder called Toronto, no, I think it's called Lions, and you're going to take the picture of the lions. You're going to create kind of a selection like this. It doesn't have to be exactly like this, but it has to show that you can add to your selection. So it can be a square and an oval if you want, whatever you think looks the best, but it has to show that there are two selections that have been added together. On this ad, somewhere it has to say Toronto Zoo, and you have to come up with your own slogan. So you need to choose the background color, make a selection that shows that you can add or subtract the selections. You have to come up with a creative slogan and use whatever text you want. You can use different styles to your text, and then it must also say Toronto Zoo. So this will be completed and submitted to me on the memory stick. Have fun!